Hello folks, today we're going to be looking at the work of Laura Dexter. Now they are working on the same scene as George, who we looked at last time, so let's get into it. So this is the exterior of the cathedral that we looked at last time on George's scene. So far, this is a really cool scene. It's set in the same world, it's the Warhammer style thing. I'll have a quick look through and then I'll give you some more specific notes. Okay, it's a big grand place, isn't it? Very nice detailing work. Okay, so, right, things that I'm seeing some similar things to what we saw with George's. Areas to look out for, there's a lot of repetition going on, and I appreciate it's hard to avoid that kind of thing. But the problem is repetition tends to catch the eye. So stuff like this, straight away, that's what I'm looking at. Rather than this gorgeous big grand building, I'm looking at the fact that the bricks here just tile so much. So in order to remedy that, you could break it up with different kinds of shapes or use some decals, or you could just make sure that your resolution is correct so that you're not tiling too much. Sometimes for things that are in the distance or inaccessible, you can lower the textile density of that region so that things that you can't see super close can have a larger texture on them. And it'll look a bit blurry if you go up close to them, but because they're in the distance, it doesn't really matter as much. That could help to remedy this a little bit because you're never going to actually access this area. Again, we've got a similar issue here. You're seeing this darker tile is really standing out constantly. So I'd say maybe in the texture, adjust it so that this isn't as dark, or make everything else a bit closer to the value of that. So you still want variation, you just don't want it to be so varied and so contrasting that it stands out that much. You still want contrast, but you can apply contrast to this kind of thing by maybe having slightly darker trims or something like that, just to give the variety without breaking the texture itself. And again, here more repetition. You can see this kind of lighter patch on the right. It's kind of prevalent throughout these pieces. You could rotate some of them to kind of offset it a little bit so it's not as obvious. Okay, this is the biggest repetition issue that I'm seeing so far, is the stairs. You know, you're looking at them, it just catches your eye that it's all exactly the same and it kind of almost looks broken, like a glitch. And because of this, you're missing on all this beauty, all this fantastic work you've done up here. You're just seeing the stairs. So what you should do for this is, I mean, if there's nothing inside these walls, you could be kind of cheeky and just move some of the stairs along. But what you would normally do, if say for example this is one mesh where, like, you know, you've got like 10 sets of stairs or something in one mesh, then you can grab the UV shells of varying stairs, move them left or right by different various amounts, and that'll give you some breakup so that everything isn't just poker straight. You've got some sort of, like, you know, variety into the horizontal positioning of them. That'll really help to sell that scene better, and it'll help it just stand out a bit more as not being broken but looking more intentional. I like what you've got here with the statues. They're pretty cool. They look like they're marble. One thing I would suggest though is be careful. This kind of stuff happens if you've not got enough contrast between things. So see the way here you've got like a perfect silhouette because it's darker back there, and you can see exactly what each of these parts are, whereas here you've got almost exactly the same color information going on here. So you kind of nice silhouette and then you lose it. It all goes blended together. Now this is okay. This can happen in painting. You get like sort of magic edges and that kind of stuff. But it would be good to have some sort of like backlighting or some kind of detail on the cape, some aging here maybe, which would then give it some separation and help it stand out on a front layer. That would help it look a bit better. Also, I'm not sure what's going on here. Is this an error or is this, I can't tell if this is supposed to be like an additional concrete piece or something sticking out the top. I'd be careful with that. Also, like I was saying about some of George's stuff, you've got a lot of kind of poker straight, like CG perfect lines going on, and you don't get that in the real world. You don't ever get perfectly straight lines unless it's like a cut diamond edge. You never get something that precise. So always try and have some kind of variety in your edges. I assume you're using Unreal Engine for this, and maybe not 5, you might be using 4, but if you're using 5 and you're using Nanite, for example, you can afford to do a lot more information with this. Even if you're not using Nanite, you can still afford to have some more actual edge geometry going on here, so you can put like dents and stuff into it. So you don't need to fully rely on the texture doing all of the work. The texture does a lot of the work, don't get me wrong, it's really important, but you still need to have some geometry support going on there. I'm not sure what's going on with the sky image, whether this is just compression in the PDF or if that's actually in the scene itself. But just check out for that. If this is something to do with your sky texture, it might be a resolution issue. I'm not entirely certain, but just look into that just in case. And if it is an issue with the render itself, set your resolution higher when you're rendering. You can always render at twice the resolution you want to and then shrink it down. That often leads to sharper results rather than trying to render, you know, at exactly the thing you want. You're then stuck at exactly what it is. This is pretty cool, but I think, again, we're having a similar issue as before where you kind of lose the silhouette of where things are. So having some kind of backlighting or some kind of breakup for these shapes will really help to sell the sort of stacked look of them, because at the moment, if you squint your eyes, you just see like dark mass, light mass, dark mass, you know, whereas if there was more separation behind them, kind of like this area, you can see they're clearly defined separate elements. That kind of thing helps to sell the shape and the grandiose nature of this structure a bit better. Also, having some sort of lighting inside the windows would be nice, because we know inside is all like candlelit and warm. Here, this is just almost opaque, like solid glass. So you'd want something. I'm not saying every room would be candlelit, but you'd want some sort of hint that inside is lit up to some degree. Okay, keep an eye out for stuff like this, where you've got intersections happening that don't seem very natural. So if you were making an actual scene out of this, like in real life, if you're using like cement or something, or stone structures, they wouldn't intersect like that and then just stop there. It would either stop on the actual bevel part there, or it would intersect more and then have some sort of connection here. So yeah, try and cut this part off a little bit higher up. Also, this part here, you can see this is quite low res, the way it just kind of angles off. So I would suggest have some more edges going on here and then round this off a bit more. I appreciate you trying to be careful with your poly counts. You know, that's still important. Even in the age of nanite, it's important to look at that kind of stuff. But I had a bad habit back in the day, which I don't want you to have, where I would not put enough information into the model because I was scared of it not being performant. And that would result in me creating artwork that isn't as good as it could be. So now I've got past that now. So now I create what I want to create and then reduce where I need to. That's a much better way of getting a really nice visual fidelity without worrying too much about performance. Performance is extremely important, but don't let it drive 100% of what you're doing. Let it drive 20, 30% of what you're doing. Because usually you can take stuff out of your model and it's not that bad. You can always reduce. However, putting stuff back into your model is usually quite a bit harder after a certain point, especially if you've done bakes and that kind of stuff. So yeah, try and aim a little bit higher. Because see, at the moment, this is notably more jagged than everything else. So yeah, get some more edges in, round it off nicer. Don't make it like round, because obviously you're trying to go for this more pointed look, but just give it a bit more of a curvature, because at the moment this doesn't look like it's intentionally shaped that way. It looks like it's lower resolution. And again, like I said before about poker straight things, this is kind of catching my eye because it's lit from this side for starters, which seems a bit strange that it's got this light source. Like there's nothing here. So it feels like it should be lit more from the side, like these, kind of getting like some front on lighting. But yeah, also you want it to not be just poker straight. You want some sort of break up there. Give it some storytelling. Have some parts that have broken off, or maybe give it a little spire that's kind of like snapped or something. You know, just try and add some different elements to it. Some more separation here would be nice. We've got the same kind of issue we were talking about before, where you're kind of losing the difference between foreground and background because of the silhouette breakup. So if this had some sort of like nice uplighting, for example, like the Arc de Triomphe would have, then that would help to sell it as a shape that's a bit further back. Because at the moment, it kind of blends straight into this edge, and you could almost think of it as being on the edge of this wall, which we all know it's not, it's further back. But because it's not really got much breakup, it's hard to tell that. So it kind of loses its depth a little bit. It looks a bit flat. So yeah, give it some uplighting or something along those lines. Some sort of, maybe some fire barrels down here that can be lighting it up a bit more. I would reduce how shiny some of these elements are as well. For example, this is like some sort of spring coil or something. Think about it. If they've been out being weathered for years in this place, they're going to be more dull. They're going to be more worn down and more tarnished. For your scene as a whole, I would do a pass to look at the roughness across the whole thing, across all your textures and materials. Because at the moment, everything's got a little bit too much of a wetness to it. In Unreal, you can look at your roughness across everything. So I suggest you do that, and areas like this are very consistent, very one tone when it comes to roughness. But if you think about it, if it was concrete or stone, it would have more of a breakup. There'd be veins and things in it. You know, there'd be stuff that really breaks up that flat surface. Stuff like that kind of helps to, it kind of makes it feel more CG than realistic. So if you take a look at some roughness maps, for example. So take this image, for example, from Very CG. You've got the kind of thing you've got at the moment, which is this kind of flatter one tone of roughness going on here. But if you have more variety in your roughness map itself, you can see you get a lot more breakup in how the light hits it and how it's sort of not as continuous, not as one note. They've also added more detail in bump maps and normal maps and stuff like that, so you could also have a bit more breakup like that. But just as an example, you can see this is already much more interesting to look at than this is. Now, you know, subjectively, you may not like it as much, or you may like it more, whatever. It doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is, as an example, it just shows you can have some breakup through the use of some additional maps, or through changing what you've currently got in some of the maps. And you got the same kind of situation here. See this? It almost looks untextured, which it could, to be fair, it could be untextured. I know you've not finished the scene yet. There could be areas that are untextured, but you should never question if something is or isn't textured. You know, it should be obvious that it is. So as an example for some nice roughness breakup, here's a scene that we've got from Samuel Metivier, who granted is a senior artist, but the point is, these are good things to look at to see what you're kind of aiming for. So see the way on the pillars here, they've got some nice roughness variation. It's not one consistent value. It's got some breakup. Same here. You know, the way the light's hitting it, it's not just hitting it as one block, you know. So let's get back to this one. So see, you've got basically one value here, whereas here you can see it breaks up quite a bit, not just because of the normal information, but that also helps if you have more normal stuff going on. But even here you can see just in the roughness, it looks really good. So yeah, that's my feedback for now. Hopefully it's nice and clear. If there's anything you need explaining further or any questions you might have, please do reach out, let me know. And yeah, if anybody else watching this would like their work being fed back on, let me know below. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you later.